Messina is a beautiful harbour city in Sicily. Today it lives on agriculture, tourism and sea trade, but perhaps its greatest contribution to the world is what we can learn from the critical mistake the city fathers made in 289 BC. In antiquity, Sicily was the scene of a great many battles between the Carthaginians and the Greek city-states. A man by the name of Agathocles was a Greek tyrant who called himself King of Sicily. He was not above using mercenaries, and he hired a large number from Campania, which is a province in southern Italy. After Agathocles died, the mercenaries were rendered unemployed, and most decided to return home, but a few stayed on Sicily. And what do you imagine they did next? Perhaps you're starting to see a modern parallel. After some raiding and criminality, a small group of men came upon the walled settlement of Messina. Now the outlaws had no siege equipment, little internal discipline, and no way of overcoming the city by siege or direct assault. The city walls would have protected the inhabitants indefinitely. But the Messenians made one critical mistake. Messina was a busy town of agriculture and trade. It was rich because the city fathers had realized that production and commerce was a far better path to wealth than looting and brigandage. However, their critical error was to assume that others thought likewise. The Messenians allowed mercenaries into their city and gave them a right to remain, asylum, if you will. Can you guess what happened next? I'm sure you can. Soon enough, the mercenaries became restless. They had no land, little money, and nothing to trade. They were effectively unemployed and living on the charity of the Messenians. Groups of unvetted young men with a history of violence living in a generous but naive host community. I'm sure you're seeing the parallel by now. One night, the mercenaries betrayed their hosts. They simply killed most of the men who were caught by surprise and either unwilling or unable to fight back. Does that remind you of anything? And those that did survive were simply thrown out of the city. The women and property were kept for the invaders, and they took to call themselves Mamertines after their war god. Soon enough, the formerly successful economy collapsed and the city became little more than a pirate base. Initially, they raided nearby towns and settlements as well as the maritime trade, and for some years they were quite successful. However, they were eventually defeated by a Syracusan, and this was the flashpoint that led to the First Punic War. So I would ask you, is there a lesson we can learn from the fate of the Messenians? Were they wise to invite unknown and unvetted violent men into their midst? Were they correct in assuming that everybody shared their culture of peaceful trade and commerce? Was their demise absolutely predictable, and is there a lesson we can learn from this today? The famous French novelist Flaubert wrote of the Greeks singing the old song of the Mamertines. With my lance and sword I plough and reap, I am master of this house. The disarmed man falls at my feet and calls me Lord and Great King. I will not invite hostile aliens into my house. I do not wish to be disarmed, and I will not fall at the feet of any invader. You shouldn't either. It's time to wake up. If you like this, please like, recommend, and subscribe.